Hello again everybody, and welcome back to another video. I am McSnazzi, and we are here again in Planet Zoo today doing another Timber Gorge video. We are officially on episode 15 in our Timber Gorge build series, and in this episode we are not doing the polar bears just yet, but we are going to do the timber wolves. I wanted to cap off the North America area before we moved on and finished the Arctic area, since there are two builds we need to do in there. We need to finish the doll sheep and the polar bears in there, and the polar bear build is going to be huge. It's going to be a long video, so we're going to have this nice little short video with the timber wolf build here, and just to finish off this North America area, because we already had the area for the timber wolf sort of sectioned off and sort of already did most of the terrain work, unlike most videos where I do the terrain work on screen right when we start it and I kind of plan it all out. So this one turned out to be a little shorter just because I didn't have to do as much planning as usual. But it's nice. It's a nice little refresher video. I've been quite busy because of the holidays, so it's just nice to get out a nice shorter video instead of spending a long time building a 20-minute one. But it's still a nice build in the end, and we get a lot of nice quality into this build, even though it is a shorter one. I really like what we do here with the environments. We've kind of been doing a lot of these North America sort of foresty builds lately, and I think I'm really coming into my stride with it. I think we are making them really nice, so they keep getting better. But this is sort of the last one that we have here. I guess the doll ram might be sort of a North America like mountainy build, but that's going to be really mountainous, not as much pine work. I'm just going to probably put them on a mountain. But for the timber wolves, I wanted to mix it up here. They do have a pretty big area, and this is a common thing I sort of see. In real life, when I've seen wolves in zoos, they have a huge amount of area, and they're usually one of the few animals that does have like a really big enclosure. And a lot of the times when you go there, you won't necessarily see this animal because they have a lot of space to hide and a lot of little areas to go into, and it's just a huge enclosure. You really don't get to see them all that much. At least the zoos that I've been to, that's what the case has been. I think it's more of a conservation type of animal, the wolf, because of the whole Yellowstone thing and everything. So I think that's a big reason why I see a lot of big enclosures for wolves. And I think it's also a part that wolves need a large area to run around in because they're used to big expanses with the packs. They traverse a lot of different areas in the wild, so I think that's why they need a big space in this. And the Arctic wolves needed a big space, so we built them a pretty big space, but they're a little smaller than the timber wolves. The timber wolves also need a lot of space, but it's not terrible, so we gave them a lot more than they need here, which is great, and I think the area turns out great. As you see on the screen, we've been building this little pond. I wanted to build a little pond area. It's more of a lake, I guess, if you think about it in terms of what the wolves will think it is in a wild scenario. So it's more of a lake for them to drink from, play around in, and it makes the area look a lot better. If we just left this plain with just making it like a big field and sort of a valley of all these hills, it would just look kind of boring. So the lake really cuts it up, makes it look a lot better, and I think it just turns out great in the end. Now here we're going to be making the cave here. We've been making a lot of caves lately. I think we've made one in the last 4 videos, maybe 3 now. I think the last 3 videos. I like to go for the same sort of strategy for each cave I build. I do that big like long rock where I put those 4 together, and then I use these really flat rocks in the back to fill up the back here, and then we just fill in the front. But for the timber wolves, I wanted them to have a little more privacy, so I think I make it a little more secluded than the other caves. The other caves are pretty wide open, but this is pretty far back, so I don't think the timber wolves will get stressed here because they're really not in the sight of the guests. I don't think they can necessarily see the guests way out there because it is a pretty far area, and I wanted them to have a lot of areas where they can get away from the guests here. We do a bit of foliage work to cover up this back sort of valley here so that they can eat and drink in peace back here, because this is where we put their food and the water station and some of their enrichment items as well. But I also put some enrichment items up in that little front run over there so that the guests can still see the timber wolves, but they won't necessarily see all of them because maybe some want to hide if they're stressed, and that's perfectly fine. So I think we're just going to do a lot of foliage work now. It was a lot of fun doing the foliage work here. We got to make it look really natural, kind of like a Yellowstone Valley sort of looking thing, and I had a lot of fun doing it. But I'm going to let the rest of this play, and I'll jump back in when we start building the Wolf Conservation Center. Alright, you just saw me finish up some of those enrichment items for the Timberwolves here. If you notice they've been boxed up for most of the video, that's because they said they were escaped even though they were contained within the enclosure. So I'm not entirely sure what that was, but I just kind of redid the gate. I deleted the gate and put it back in because when I restarted the game it didn't work. So deleted the gate. So if you ever have that sort of bug, if you just delete the gate, it fixes it. But here we're going to move on and build the structure for the video. This is the structure that we're going to have in the Timberwolf sort of area. This is going to be a Timberwolf Education Center, Conservation Center, sort of the same sort of thing we did with the grizzly bear. I wanted to do here at the Timberwolves since we're sort of theming this zoo in this sort of very woodsy sort of theme, so that I think it's important that these sort of zoos would have, if it was in real life, they would have these education centers for the North American animals since they're more common in these areas, and people probably see them in the wild in these areas, so it's good to know a lot about them at these zoos. So I think it's cool. Sort of a basic sort of building we built here. It's kind of like the gift shop in a way. It has that lodge feel. And I used a little bit of the inspiration from the Grizzly Bear Education Center, even though it's not nearly as modern as that building. But it's just sort of a basic lodge-looking building. I think it looks nice and it's very fitting for what it's supposed to be. But this is the building I wanted to build here. I think we'll build similarly a building for the polar bear enclosure where we have sort of an education center on, like, you know, polar bears, global warming, that sort of thing. I think that'll be very fitting for that exhibit. But I think here shortly we're going to jump into the real-time portion of the video where I walk around the exhibit, and it's pretty short, so this isn't a long video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, but I'll jump back in when we are in the live portion. So here we are in the live portion, everybody. We did a lot of work off camera here. We made this sign, we added some stuff to the buildings, we added some more stuff around the walkways here, but a lot of boring stuff I didn't want to put in. I wanted to keep this one short. But here it is, here's the final building for the education center. It's just really basic. Put those windows on the front, and we also made this little sculpture statue in front here. I think it fits in pretty well, but it's a cool little building. Nothing too fancy, but it looks good. And we cleaned up this area a bit. We added this fence, we did some more stuff. But here's a nice look at the enclosure. I think it looks great. It's nice and wide open. It really fits with the sort of theme we're going for with the zoo, as we see those those mountains in the background arching over here. I think it really fits. It looks like we're in Yellowstone Valley and we're looking at these timber wolves running around, and I think it's just awesome. Super happy with this build. It was a shorter one because we had a lot of the area sort of already carved out for the timber wolves, so it was really helpful in that sense to keep it short. But we'll walk around a little since it is a big enclosure. You can't necessarily see the timber wolves every time you come. But here's a lot of the work we did. We did a lot of tree work on the outside, rock work as well, kind of keep this valley sort of feel, which I think wolves really like. And here's the timber wolves. They're just sort of hanging out right there looking at each other, but I think the models look great. Really happy to put these in, especially after we did the Arctic wolves, because I think the Arctic wolf area turned out really well. So next time we're going to be doing polar bears or the rams. I'm not entirely sure yet, but we're going to do one of those, and we're going to finish up the Arctic area after we do those two builds. I think there'll be two separate videos, but stay tuned on the channel for those. The wolves playing around a little more, but really like the environment here. I think it turns out really well. You could just take screenshots without the animals. It looks really nice. But thank you everyone for watching. I appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this. Stay tuned on the channel for more content. I post weekly, and we're on episode 15 now, so next one's going to be 16, and we're getting up there now. So the zoo's getting close to being finished. But thank you for everyone who stuck around, everyone who's been staying tuned. I hope you guys have a happy new year, and I'll see you in 2020. Thanks again, everybody.